in this more up-to-date testing, we have to protect for internal, which is lesser, and external, which is greater.
Welcome to Fireproof, the Passive Fire podcast, where we delve into the world of passive fire protection. Join the Pro-Finish team as we dig into the issues we see on site and in our industry every day, and find out how you can save time, money and headaches on major construction projects. Okay, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Russell Whiteford and I'm joined today by Eliza Dodd and Jayden Symes. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks for having me back. It's good to be back.
Yeah, I mean, the fans are going to be pretty excited that we've got our first female guest on the podcast, Liz. So
a lot of pressure, Russ.
It took a bit of arm twisting, but we finally got one of the Pro-Finish ladies to join the podcast, which is great. We're really excited to be able to showcase our team and what you guys know. What we're going to talk about today is recently we went for a visit to AG Coombs, their mechanical contractor. We visited their head office and presented to the team about some of the changes to the current standards in relation to fire rating ductwork. You guys did a really great job presenting to the team there, so we thought it would be a really good opportunity to use that content and share it via our podcast. Maybe Jayden, kick us off, like big picture, what changed? And then how does that impact on mechanical companies and also builders?
Definitely. So obviously in the last few years, there's been a change in the NCC that they've brought out the 2022 version, and how that affects us in the fire protection industry is the test standard we work towards for fire-rated component, like fire-rated materials on building elements and structures is AS 1530 Part 4. Previously, until the NCC 2022 come out, we could use previous versions of AS 1530 Part 4. So we could use the 2005 or 1997 or any previous versions. But on all projects from now, which I think was brought in the 1st of May 2023, everything has to be tested to AS 1530 Part 4 2014. So what that means is there's more stringent test standards that need to take place these days. So different products are needed to be installed, which can significantly affect estimates from contractors. So obviously we're trying to get in front of those people just to make sure they're aware of the changes so they don't get caught out in their estimating or their product delivery.
Yeah, that's right. So you've reeled off a string of numbers. In like real simple terms, like what does that mean for a mechanical contractor, and then what might that mean for a builder?
What it means for mechanical contractors, it's really important to understand what NCC they're working to. So if it's a 2019 version, there is different tested products to a project working under the NCC 2022. So effectively for duct, there's been a lot of changes in regards to thicknesses of wrap and spray, which obviously affects material needs to be applied, so more labour. So different hangers, different supports, things like that. So we just need to make sure that they're aware of those because it can significantly affect their times on site and any design they do for these mechanical ducts or penetrations.
Yeah, great. Has it impacted penetrations as well? So if you've got ducting and cabling penetrating through firewalls?
Definitely. So the clause doesn't just relate to ductwork as such; it relates to the whole industry. So anything tested to AS 1530 Part 4 can't 2014 can be used under NCC 2022 project, which now obviously also affects penetrations. It affects steel protection. It affects the whole works. Anything tested under that standard. So penetrations is a big one. What we're finding in the industry is it's slowly catching up. There was a massive lag there where manufacturers were trying to push their tests, but there's only so many accredited labs in Australia, so they couldn't have materials or systems tested quickly enough to roll out to the industry. So there was a massive lag, which is the reasoning why the implementation date was pushed back from, I think it was 2022. I think it was pushed back to September of that year, and then obviously pushed back again to 1st of May 2023, which now it's all current. Yeah.
So it's been into effect for a year now.
Exactly. Yep. But there's still new systems being rolled out by manufacturers monthly. So it's an ever-changing environment.
Yeah, that's right. Liz, you've come from you're a civil engineer by trade, and we've brought you across to the passive fire industry. How do you find keeping up with those changes and, just learning about the industry and becoming an expert in the industry?
Yeah, as Jayden's touched on, like it is ever changing the industry and the testing, and you just got to stay on top of it. It's really good going to suppliers to see all their different options, and they give us updated test reports, updated manuals, and it's just about like educating builders on site because they look to us for those answers. So we've just got to make sure that we're staying on top of it. We get most of our information from suppliers, test reports, and then we just relay that information to builders, mechanical contractors, and other service trades for penetrations.
Yeah. So you've talked about test reports. So maybe one of you want to give us a breakdown of sort of what is a test report, what is an assessment report.
Yep. Definitely. So a test report is something that happens obviously by an accredited lab. So a manufacturer will go out to have their products tested in a furnace which is tested under the standard of AS 1530 Part 4. So that sets the guidelines of how it needs to be tested. And then effectively there is a test report done based off the fire report by the fire engineers within that lab. And they pretty much explain this is exactly how it has to be installed on site for it to be compliant system as a deemed to satisfy. The difference between a test report and an assessment report is an assessment report effectively is not representative of a fire test. It's just based a summary of a fire engineer from the lab of what they think will perform in a fire. Because if you think about it, every different penetration, every different wall type, there'd be thousands and thousands and thousands of different tests needs to be done. So an assessment report effectively captures those without the test actually being done, but it uses the supporting evidence from those tests and the test reports to effectively make a summary and put it into a report that says this will be a deemed to satisfy system. So we can install it and it can be certified by us as a deemed to satisfy system.
Yeah. Okay, so if as an installer, like if we had a technical install guide for a product, is that enough? Is it enough having that information and then going to install a product that's marketed as a passive fire product that'll achieve a certain rating? Is that enough information for me to then say that this system is compliant?
Effectively, no, because what happens is really good manufacturers are really transparent with their technical data. So their technical data should and will come from the test or assessment reports. But the actual raw data itself comes from the test or assessment report. So we have to install per those test or assessment reports to be a deemed to satisfy system. What isn't captured sometimes is on a technical data sheet is, like we were saying before, is what version of AS 1530 Part 4 it's been tested to.
Yep.
And it doesn't, we can't certify something against a technical data sheet. It has to be certified against the test or assessment report. So
that's the key piece of information, isn't it?
Exactly. There's a massive difference between a technical data sheet and a test or assessment report, which is produced by an accredited lab.
Yep, that's right. So we're sort of starting to touch on products. You mentioned manufacturers a few times. So what are some of the common methods of achieving a fire rating on mechanical ducting?
I can jump in if you want, Jayden.
Go for it, Liz.
For us, we generally use two different types, either spray or wrap for fire rated ductwork. There's two different wraps, fire wrap from Trafalgar or 3M. And we also use for spray Cafco vermiculite, monocoat or LAF.
Yep.
So they've both all got their pros and cons and different uses for different
That's right.
outcomes.
Every product's got its pros and cons. So obviously what we target ourselves at is knowing the pros and cons of each product and being able to implement the product specific to the project's requirements and project's needs.
Yeah. And we don't need to go into, I suppose, what those specific manufacturers' pros and cons are. We work with all of the big players in the industry. So talk to us about maybe just really briefly how they work and maybe what type of duct typically would need to be protected.
Yes, so in regards to what type of duct needs to be protected, like in a fire, for example, the duct systems actually shut down like a lift would in a fire. The only ones that need to remain working are the ones that carry the smoke and the fire outside of the building, or the ductwork that supplies air to an area such as like a fire stair. So people obviously need to escape out those routes. So we need to protect like fire exhausts and those pressurised systems. But in the new testing, which Jayden's touched on, in the past that used to be protected to the same level, like internal and external fire exposure was the same. But in this more up-to-date testing, we have to protect for internal, which is lesser, and external, which is greater. So external fire protection is for fire that is like pressurising a stairwell. So that's very less common. There's usually only one or two on an apartment building, for example.
Right.
The rest are exhausts, like kitchen exhausts or any other type of exhaust, which are a lot more common.
Yeah.
So they're the type of ducts that need to be protected in a fire, and we can use wrap or spray for both. Again, they have all their different pros and cons as such, but we use spray as a cheaper option. And it's a lesser thickness for external fire. You can use up to 3 layers of wrap when protecting for external fire. So that can be very costly and very labour intensive and very time consuming. But then it's only 1 layer of wrap usually for internal fire protection.
Yep. Do you want to talk about why? Like, what's the fire rating that we're typically trying to achieve? I know it's different. Like, there's a lot of different variables, but typically
we're 120, 120, 120. So that's the FRL we're trying to achieve for fire rated ductwork.
There's definitely systems that or definitely projects that you need up to 180 or 180. So 3 180s or less than that. So there is tested systems that can achieve that, but generally, obviously, the one we see most commonly is 120, 120, 120.
Yep. And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for a person who's occupying the building?
Well, effectively, what it is the system is tested for 120 minutes to effectively let the people have that amount of time to escape the building before that system fails.
Yep.
So if the duct's tested to 120 minutes, you theoretically should have 120 minutes to safely escape that building.
Yeah, before the duct might be a weak point where the fire can then move through compartments within the building. Yeah. Okay, that was sort of one of the key things of just, if anyone who's not really familiar with what we do or familiar with, an FRL, sort of want people to understand what that means. So you've touched on a little bit of internal and external fire exposure. Do you want to just really simply, does that mean fire outside the duct or fire inside the duct? Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, so internal fire exposure is for fire inside the duct.
Yep.
So that's carrying the fire out of the building.
Yep.
And then external fire exposure is there is a fire outside the duct and you've got to protect the air because that air is being used to protect like a stairwell.
Yep. So we talked about the variability between products and what they can provide. So like if I'm a PM at a MET company and I've found out that a bit of ducting that we've installed needs to be fire rated, what's going to be faster to install? What's going to be more cost effective? What should I do? Like if I'm not sure.
Probably what we're finding is we need to find out whether the fire protection is for internal or external fire, because that will and can dictate the cost and the system we use. So
So as the PM, like, would I know that, or do I need somebody else to?
So the mechanical engineers should be able to give you that information, which they can provide to us, and based
so that's
on
the
that,
first bit of information that I need to have as a PM. Yep.
And the FRLs, obviously.
And the FRLs. Yep. And then what am I going to do in terms of finding a product? What's going to be most cost effective? What's going to be faster? What's going to be maybe the best outcome for the end user?
Again, like it's definitely project specific. So fastest would be spray. But then we could look at if it's later down the track and the rest of the building is built out, like we need to be clean. So adding masking up to that could really drive the cost up. So in that option, we might lean towards, if it's internal fire exposure, we'll lean towards wrap because it's going to be clean, fast, and more cost effective than spray and masking up.
Yeah.
But if it's just internal fire exposure, like the building's going to have a suspended ceiling, we'll just spray it at 61 mil for CAFCO or 54 for monocoat. So that would be a cheap option and cost effective and fast. But again, that's a good thing. We've got sort of a view on all different products, and we can apply that to that specific duct and project.
Yeah, I think one of the key things you touched on there was just the stage of the project. That's going to make a big difference to maybe what we do.
Yep.
Definitely. So obviously with RAP too also, like what we're noticing in the industry is there's a shift towards modular or offsite construction.
Yeah.
So I know in the past we've pre-wrapped some projects before they've been sent to site so they can effectively limit the time on site. There's a few little things we need to do on site obviously to make the system compliant, but a lot of it can be done off site. Also benefits with RAP can also be it's cosmetically more pleasing or aesthetically more pleasing than say a spray would be. And I know in like data centers as such, we're doing a fair bit of work now. They just steer clear from spray systems because of the dust that they think might impact the electronics there. So there's been a big push for RAP systems in some of the data centers we're working on.
Is there a risk of dust from spray?
Definitely in the installation, yes. And it is a brittle product, so if it does get knocks or there is movement,
There's something pushing up against it down the track.
Yeah, definitely. But there's a mesh used to reinforce the product for the sprays. So generally there won't be too much, but I know clients shifting away from that just because of the installation method and the longevity of RAP versus a spray system.
Can you provide a coating over the top of it to limit that or to improve the aesthetic of spray?
You can definitely paint it, and there are products that you can use to bond it together a little bit better. Yeah, which I know ProMat have some systems there.
Yeah. So just you touched about offsite or prefab. We did quite a big project in our Pro-Finish coatings factory. I think we had prefab duct come through, which we wrapped offsite.
Yep.
Recently. Do you remember which project it was?
I'm not too sure. I think it was for Alice Air, but we definitely that's one of the capabilities we have is we can do these things offsite. We're not just an on-site company. We've got yard space ourselves that we can tailor solutions, which we sort of pride ourselves on a little bit. Is not just giving everyone the same system and same solution. We want to work with whoever it is to make sure they've got the right outcome for them. So it's obviously the most efficient and cost-effective, or whatever their motivators are, we can work towards and tailor a solution towards that.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know if you're touching on the same project, but we did one for D&E and we did it in their factory and wrapped it, and then they carted it over to Adelaide.
Yeah, okay.
And got a contractor to finish it off on site there.
Right, okay.
So that's an option as well.
Yeah. There's definitely more of that in the modular space. We're finding, particularly with our coatings company, with Pro-Finish Coatings, where we're able to do paint modules here, sandblast and paint, and they're getting shipped all over the place. That's starting to happen too with other types of work that we do, board, the fire rated plastering, and now the ductwork as well, which is great. So do you have, Lizzie, just like a real high level summary maybe of the pros and cons of like if I was weighing up whether to wrap or to spray a duct?
Yeah, well, definitely cost comes into it. So spray is more cost effective. Wrap is more labour intensive, which drives the price up, and also the cost of the product is more expensive. Okay. But then wrap looks cleaner. It requires no masking up. It's lighter. So if you're pushing limits with hangers and stuff like that, we're getting a lot of questions. Well, I'm getting a lot of questions from like mechanical contractors about the weight of the spray, the wet density, the dry density. Yeah. So that's where we offer wrap as an option because it is a lighter option.
So they might need to then increase the support or engineering of the duct, which might offset the cost. Yeah,
exactly. So you got to look at it holistically. Some of the other things is the spray requires 3-phase power and water on site, whereas the wrap doesn't. The wrap also can be done off-site, as we've discussed. What else have we got, Jayden? Oh, the warranty difference is 20 years for spray and 30 for wrap. So that's if you're going something you don't want to access or can't access, you want that longevity. it's also maybe worth touching on like the different testing for fan encasements and access panels. So
that was going to be my next question.
Oh,
You just
sorry.
mentioned it. Oh, no, you just mentioned access, and I was, what about for areas that you need to be able to access into the duct? So those fan encasements and access panels.
yeah, so well, there's different access panel testing for each different system. So like with FIREPROOF has their own access panels. Then Maxilite is used with monocoat. That's a type of board, and then Promosil 1100 is also used with CAFCO. So they've got their different testing for access panels, which we install on like kitchen exhausts or where there are access panels on the plans. For fan encasements, so there's different testing again. You can spray the fans, but obviously with the fans moving, it's not ideal because the spray makes a bit of noise and it jeopardizes, as Jayden said, it's brittle. So that constant movement can cause it to chip off or dust in areas, which isn't ideal. So we try to steer away from that, even though that's definitely the most cost-effective options. Once we explain a few of these things to the mechanical contractors, they seem to go, okay, it's not worth it. Let's look at other options. So for monocoat, for example, that spray, if we're spraying the duct in that, we've got the option to do like a Maxilite board bulkhead for the fan with access, or we can do FIREPROOF. So there's a testing now, there's a detail between the monocoat and the FIREPROOF. So we can now FIREPROOF the fans, which is clean, more cost effective than a board enclosure. And it's got access panels tested for it as well. And then CAFCO has the option for a promo mesh, like
Pro mesh system around the case.
like
spray.
boxed out enclosure. And that's sprayed over the top. And then also a Promosil 1100 bulkhead.
And probably, the important thing to note is, like I was sort of said before, is it is constantly changing. So every couple of weeks, it's an evolving situation. So there's, in the last probably month or so, there's been board systems bought out by Proma, which we can now install to ducts. So it's a constantly changing environment. So it's really important to not just think because something worked in the past, it's the best option now, which is obviously where we can assist in designing the best system for everyone's needs, which obviously we're across, we've got really good relationships with our manufacturers and the technical teams there. So we're across that and the testing that they have and how they complement each other. Yeah,
that's a great point from Jayden, because when the updated duct stuff came out, we could only spray the fans. And so then there was like no real options. But now, like just a couple of weeks ago, Trafalgar brought out the interface between the wrap and the spray. So that's a game changer, in my opinion. Yeah.
That was one of the questions that we got from AG Coombs when we were there. And I think they asked something along the lines of spraying over fan encasements or access panels, which would technically be as per a tested system, and it would satisfy the mechanical contractor's requirement of fire rating the duct. However, it's going to potentially impact the end user or the client, some time down the track if there's maintenance required. So I feel like sometimes it's important for the builder or even the client to understand what the implications are sort of long term for all these different options.
And yet that's where we work with our client and like our mechanical contractors, because we can go, they've asked us to spray the fan, we'll spray the fan. But like that's not doing anyone any favours. Yeah,
long term it's not. I mean, short term the building's going to be able to be occupied.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, you just got to flag that with them and say, look, we can do it, but this is the implications and that. And I find this going, what else? What can we do?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's good. They're obviously, they don't want a situation where there's a failure to a fan in 3 years or 5 years' time, which might be a warranty issue, but then all of a sudden you've got to respray, a big portion of duct.
Yeah.
So we talked a little about access panels, how they can be treated, changes. If we probably move on to penos, so whether that's physical ducting running through fire compartments or cabling, is there some key things for a builder or a head contractor to be aware of? Like if you're running a project and you've got mechanical companies there cutting holes in firewalls, what's important for the builder to be aware of?
The biggest thing to be aware of with penetrations is it's not a product to be applied, it's a system to be applied. So the system's made up of so many components, like the service type, the service size, the service material, the building elements, like the element material, and then the FRL. So there's so many different variables which go into a tested system. It's not just, hey, here's a wall, here's a pipe, let's caulk it, and it's compliant. So the industry is getting better, the building industry, but it's still probably not at an extent, it's probably not at a stage where it needs to be. So obviously we have a really good knowledge of what system works with what penetrations, and we pride ourselves, I suppose, to help contractors and builders at the start of a project. So it's designed right, it's installed right to save costs and time later in the project. So definitely an area we like to get involved with is early in a project, so we can set it up right to set a project up to succeed, as opposed to trying to defect everything and rectify everything later.
It's complicated getting on site and then finding that there was penetration detail that was missed. That's it's definitely a more complicated process after the fact when you're trying to work out whose responsibility it is and how it's going to be treated. So we've got two separate teams essentially. Our spray or wrap team is usually doing different projects to our Peno team. We've got Peno experts that come through. We've also got auditors. Do you want to? Is it worth touching on auditing?
Definitely. So obviously our auditors, what they can do, there's a few different services they offer, but one of them was obviously defect reports. So we get engaged by builders all the time to go through and effectively audit and create a report on any non-compliant systems within a project. So we'll allocate an auditor to go out. They'll create a report. From that report, there's obviously a list of defects. We can give the builders or contractors a price to rectify them, or obviously they can rectify them themselves. We obviously prefer to have ourselves engaged because we know we're going to do it correct. But if the subcontractor or a contractor does it themselves, we can come back and reassess this. So we'll give advice based on the audit of what needs to happen for it to be compliant. But a lot of the times there's a bit of a knowledge gap between the subbies and tested systems. So obviously we have that knowledge, so we can effectively treat them and streamline the project. So, but again, it's better off to get us in at the start so we can actually get to it before the issues happen, as opposed to coming in after and then trying to defect people's work, which no one likes.
It's a bit of a common, it happens more commonly than what I would have thought I would like. We get phone calls to come and do an audit of finished work. And then we're finding that there's things that should have been done differently, throughout the project, and that's reworks or cost for somebody.
Pre-construction registers is a good one. Get us on early so we can, even if they're still going to get their trades to do the penetrations treatment, we can get in, do the pre-construction register, even do a training day or a dummy wall and show the trades how they're to install their penetrations and what treatment to use. And then we can come back at the end and audit all their work and make sure they've installed it correctly. There still may be defects, but there'd be less.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they've been given the guidelines, or I suppose, or the map before the project started. And I think, like you said, it's such a constantly changing environment. There's so many variables and so many options. How would a mechanical company or a builder determine what would be the best solution or best Peno solution?
Effectively come to us at the start, and like Lizzie was just saying with a penetration pre-construction register, effectively what that is a document which specifies the systems and everything I went through before. So like the service type, the service FRL, the substrate, the orientation of the substrate, and effectively every system in the project will be specified and approved. We'll put a register together, have all those systems in it, and then we'll send that off to the builder. The builder will send that to the building surveyor, have that approved before anything's installed. So then effectively what it means is all the systems have been approved by the building surveyor. They just have to be installed as per those report and that register to be compliant, which obviously we stay across and make sure they are installed as per what's been tested and what's been spec'd to ensure compliance throughout the whole project.
Yeah, that's right. Look, I was going to maybe close up now. I think we've covered quite a bit. And final thoughts, I was thinking, what does a mechanical contractor, when would be the best time to get in touch, I suppose, when they're looking at a project? You've kind of both touched on this already, and the common answer is the sooner the better. How early, Liz, are you sort of working on projects? How early in the piece? Like,
Yeah, well, I'm tendering a lot of projects, so very early on. And I usually give an option for both spray and wrap because they're not sure on a few things. But yeah, the earlier the better. Like we're working in design stages now, and even live projects that are constantly changing design. Like we're working with like Alice Air, D&E, AG Crooms at that stage. They're coming to us for information, and we can sort of guide them on like the best options that early on.
Yeah, so you're working on projects when the project is still going to tender. So there might be multiple mechanical companies that are still bidding for that project.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And working with a few different.
And then when that project becomes live or it's awarded, often there's some tweaks and changes. So there's a process of design advice, I suppose, early or an indicative quote or an estimate, and then there's we can firm that up when a project goes live.
Yeah.
But I think that's been a big shift in the industry. We're definitely finding that people are engaging us earlier, and it's leading to a better outcome.
Definitely, and probably just on that, obviously what we do is the 3 pillars of passive fire. We design, construct and certify. So obviously we want to be involved in the design so we can make sure at the end we can certify it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts, guys? Anything else you'd like?
No, like obviously, like we've a bit of summary of what we've gone through is it's constantly changing. So we stay across it. That's obviously part of our role, is to stay across the industry and all the changes. So we can point people in the right directions for multiple different systems across multiple suppliers. So get us involved as soon as possible in your project so we can help out and make sure we got compliance solutions being installed on site.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
All right, thanks guys. Thanks for both joining this morning and having the conversation. Lizzie, thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
First time and first female that we've had on the show. Let's go and put some pressure on some of the other ladies in the office. All right, thanks guys.
Thanks, Ross.
Thanks.